what kind of drew me towards ITC's management trainee program was this like really high level of investment that they make into, young graduates. In our education, we're always told that, there's a very deterministic path to get to an answer, but real life is rarely that. One of the products I worked on was the checkout page on Amazon.com, to the tune of $5 to $6 million a month. Uber is not just a ride-sharing business. Like it can get you your food, it can get you groceries, it can get you alcohol, book a rental car for you. So one advice that someone gave to me actually, and I would like to give to folks.
Welcome to another episode of this podcast series where I interview product managers and leaders across the entire tech ecosystem. Today we're talking to Mitesh Shah, who started his career working on physical products at ITC and then moved on to work at Amazon, Uber, and now is a staff product manager at Block. Hey Mitesh, what's up? How are you doing?
Hi Kash, I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm good. Great having you here, and I'm really looking forward to our chat. So, um, maybe let's. I want to actually start way back at ITC and how you got started in your career. Talk to me about what was your role there. How did that shape your career going forward?
So ITC, for folks who kind of don't know, like ITC is a multi-business conglomerate based primarily in India, but also has businesses in a few countries in South Asia. I joined ITC right after my college into what they call it as their management trainee program. What kind of drew me towards ITC's management trainee program was this like really high level of investment that they make into young graduates. So it was almost like an extended college. It was like a mini MBA business degree that you get because you're given these mini projects to work on. Like you spend a couple of months doing sales, a couple of months doing like projects with marketing. You try different things out, and then a year after you actually join the company, that's when you are kind of given a specific role. That's what made it like really interesting for me, that this is a place where I can learn how to run a real business. So from a learning perspective, it was great to see firsthand how some of these products are actually bought and sold in sometimes in like very rural markets, right? Like how are things different in like India's urban markets, and how are customer patterns and consumer needs different in some of the different markets, and really being able to tie back these various functions like operations, marketing, and sales and strategy, and how they kind of tie back together into running a successful business. So that was like one of the big kind of learnings I got at ITC. And then once I kind of finished this 1 year management training program, I was given a role to lead operations at one of the biggest like food manufacturing facilities at ITC. So that was a great experience, being a 22-year-old recent grad, given the opportunity to lead a team of 20-25 people. So I learned a lot about team management, about empathizing, leading without actually having an authority over over folks, which has been really valuable later on in my career. If you have experience like 15 years in the industry, you automatically gain some level of authority. But in this case, I was like this young graduate who was trying to tell and what to do and what not to do to a bunch of folks who have like 15-20 years of experience. So I quickly realized that the way I can lead these people and like really add value is, being involved with them, understanding what problems they are trying to solve and problem solve with them. So um, really some of these skills ended up helping me later on as a product manager, where you don't really end up having a lot of direct authority over folks, but you have to kind of lead through influencing, lead through uh, you know being a thought partner to some of the folks. um, and then I think I spent almost 5 years at ITC, which was great, because that was I could see how the work at factories related to work at a corporate level. So eventually, I ended up moving to the corporate headquarters and working on, like, hey, how do we grow the business? So it was a good opportunity for me to round out my experience, from everything that I'd learned in my initial stint of kind of going around the country, learning how sales and distribution works and how marketing works, and then really like working at the grassroots level at the factory, running operations, and then bringing all of that to, hey, now how do we take a step back and think about where to go next? How do we grow our business? What are some of the challenges that might come up? So ITC was a great first job I had. I learned a lot of skills that I, even to this date, kind of remember some of the anecdotes from that time, and apply to my day-to-day job.
Yeah, maybe double clicking on, after your first year at ITC. So, you spend your first year doing like a rotation program, going through a few different functions, sales, marketing, maybe something on the engineering side, etc. And then you were given this opportunity to go and, be uh, a lead of an actual product. And your first day you stepped into that food processing, you said food processing product operations unit. What was that like? Like what? I mean, yeah. What was the mixed feelings going through your head at that time?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and the this management trainee program was, like, designed specifically to bring young talent from the IITs and ITs and IIMs of the world, and putting them into these leadership roles. And the idea was to make you a little bit uncomfortable and kind of throw you in the deep end of the pool. So the first day was, you kind of start seeing who is supportive of you coming in as like this young graduate into this role, and who is not. And there are clearly two camps in most of the business units at ITC. I felt like, so it was pretty daunting to kind of walk into that role, but you kind of start realizing, uh, who you can trust and who you actually need to kind of do a little bit of trust building with. Um, so it starts off being daunting, and there's a little bit of, like, there's a little bit of a warm up period where you tend to do your last project during the 1 year rotation at the same unit with the same set of folks before you're actually given a role. So there was a little bit of continuity in that sense, but you have to do a lot of trust building, really prove your salt and your metal, to win the respect, and rightfully so, because there is that pattern where a lot of people kind of come in, they want to get some experience and then move on to do the next thing. But a lot of folks who've been around for 15-20 years, uh, they've kind of seen a lot of folks coming in and going out, and kind of rotating through the system. So you have to really get into the trenches with them, get your hands dirty, and that's a process that kind of took a year, or that took a month or two, and then once you execute successfully on one project, and that's when you start building trust, and then it's a little bit easier, and you get the momentum to keep doing, like, the second project and the third project and so on.
Yeah. And I'm sure you took on a lot of great, projects and roles at ITC, because after your 5 years at ITC, you went for your MBA to HBS. Um, how do you think your experience at ITC helped you stand out in your applications for the MBA? And like, just from a storytelling perspective, what was unique about that experience for you?
I was really fortunate to attend a school like HBS. It was one of those things that I'd only kind of seen or heard of in media or something like that. So when it really happened, I was like shocked and like really surprised that it all worked out. So I I'm pretty sure, Akash, you feel the same way as well. Like, it's a privilege to be going to
Yeah.
a school like Harvard to be in that like immersive 2 year program. Um, so for me, really, I think I did not start off by saying, I'm going to go to HBS. I was really looking for the next step in my career. So I really kind of looked at this one business, and looked at it from all different aspects. Really looked at the growth strategy and worked at like the ground execution level. um, and I was looking for like I was looking to move to a different industry, and we can chat about like why and like what are some of the challenges in an industry like CPG. um, and then I was also kind of looking to broaden my horizons about like what are the different industries, what are the challenges, like what are the similarities and differences in other industries. So I was looking at it from that perspective. I think what really came together for me was just the fact that I was able to get to work on really impactful projects that ended up becoming, pretty big, significant brands for ITC. So I had that unique perspective of like seeing an idea from its inception to actually growing it out to becoming a successful brand. I had a very strong network that I'd built for myself at ITC, so I could lean on some of my mentors to really help me tell that story in a way that's interesting and exciting for the admissions committee. Um, and Yeah, I think the way I was able to stand out in my applications, people come from people have really impressive backgrounds at HBS, but I think one thing that I was able to position slightly differently was um, just having worked at a very grassroots level, really leading worker teams to take on responsibility and ownership of their own work, and I was able to kind of drive some really good results in terms of quality improvements and cost improvements by organizing blue collar workmen to take on ownership in the factory and uh, really empowering them to make white collar business decisions, and that ended up becoming like a very um, important kind of mechanism in the company, and it was adopted by a lot of different factories. So and it really brought the ownership down from decision making and accountability and metrics were all considered as a purview of the managers who are running the factories and supervising the work of like uh, of the workmen in the factory. But I think the one initiative that I was able to really drive at ITC was, hey, how do you get workmen to own and like I think these are like distinctions that we've created where someone's a manager and someone kind of executes the job on the shop floor, but if you kind of turn that around, you get really really powerful results. So that was like a unique thing which I could share, and that's what kind of made my application interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that's a interesting sort of angle to that, where basically you were going really deep on, one industry, one segment, thinking through all the different levers that you could push, even living through, through 5 years, living through some macroeconomic factors and things like that, I'm sure. So just living through all of that ends up making it unique because you've seen the entire cycle. But then, the other end of the spectrum is consulting, and there's a question that I get very often, especially from folks who are just starting off in their careers, of should I go for should I go work at a consulting firm, or should I go work in an operating role at one company? And I think from the outside, the pros and cons are obvious to folks, where the consulting, you're going to get this breadth, you're going to get to work on interesting problems across industries, across companies. You get to see, multiple different things. So it's almost like an industry rotation, where you're like spending 3 months at one company, solving one problem, and then you move on. Versus operate, at one company working in an operating role, you're spending 2, 3, 4, 5 years just probably solving one or two core problems. Looking back, what's kind of your advice, to folks who might just be getting started in their career? What makes the most sense in terms of overall learning and career growth?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the most important things that I totally agree. Like, these are two different paths. Even if you are in a one of these operating roles, you might feel that, hey, should I try like three different things and, like, broaden my perspective, instead of really becoming an expert in one single industry and one single business. And I think, my advice is, like, I think both are important. If you spend your entire kind of career in a single field and getting really deep into one, I think you're kind of missing out on the opportunity to see how other companies work, how other functions work, which is important, to bring a slightly fresh perspective to a problem. But I think the other side is also kind of important, where you learn how to go really deep into problems, and some really interesting things that you learn by going deep is sometimes not the most flashy solutions are the one that create the most value. Some really fundamental basic things, like culture in the company, and how you're running meetings and things like that can have such a dramatic impact on the morale and the outcomes of the company. And like these kind of things, you kind of learn only when you operate for a really long period of time with a set and a specific set of people. So I would say just get both kinds of experiences. If you feel like you're jumping too much from one industry to another, and you're getting that breadth, you're getting an exposure of various things. Try to look for opportunities where you can build a little bit of depth. But if you think that you're building too much of a depth and you're not really getting to see a lot of different industries, then it might make sense to go for an MBA, take a gig, ask your manager for a rotation, or something like that, just to get out of your comfort zone and try different things and build empathy for different functions and different types of customers. Um, for me, I mean, I thought I was getting a lot of that width, the breadth, from just being in an MBA program, where I was meeting people from various different industries, various different countries, and I felt like I was generally a curious person who is always kind of reaching out to my friends and people in my network and understanding about their life and what roles they are doing, how is their day to day life. So I was getting that breadth from some other avenue. So it's just really up to you to think whether you are becoming this kind of well-rounded professional, and take that call whether you want to optimize for width or depth.
That's probably kind of the most sound advice, where essentially you want to build the T diagram for your career, where you want to go wide on a bunch of things, so you get empathy and you know broadly how industries and companies work, but you want to go deep as well, so you have some expertise, you have some core skill sets which you can use to add value. um, Makes sense. So let's get to the product side of things now. So, after spending, first few years of your career doing operating role, and then spending some months doing a consulting role, how did you end up in tech and product? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so so I was in this place where I really didn't know what I kind of wanted to do next. In when I came out of the summer, and consulting was great, and I but it still wasn't kind of feeling the right fit for me. So I kind of really thought about where I wanted to go, and we discussed about this and how kind of tech was fitting
Hmm.
what I was looking for as the next step. So I really started looking for companies that I could apply to. Um, as a Sometimes, as an international, and this is specific to people who are trying to recruit for PM roles in US. The unfortunate reality is that your options kind of get limited to big tech, essentially. uh, of course, you can find tech product management roles at smaller companies, but it's a little bit of a hassle to get them to sponsor your visa, uh, especially if if you're someone who is trying to enter into the product management career. It's slightly easier if you have relevant experience and the company thinks that they want to make that investment in you, and investment of whatever, like $5,000 is probably not a big deal for a larger company like Amazon or Google or Microsoft, but it tends to be like a big investment for a smaller company. So I kind of quickly realized that I should be focusing on big tech because I'm trying to break into a new industry. So I wanted a little bit of a structure to guide me and like teach me the core product management skills before I go into smaller, medium and smaller size companies. So based on that, I kind of narrowed down on big tech as my target set of companies that I wanted to apply to. Uh, Again, there are books about this as well, and this is kind of written in a lot more detail. But a lot of, even within the big tech, there's a spectrum of companies. Some companies tend to be a lot more engineering driven. What that really means is, as a PM, you're also kind of expected to bring a lot of technical skill sets to the table. And then there's another spectrum of companies like Amazon where you know they the Amazon is more comfortable hiring a generalist as a product manager even on technical roles, and they kind of there's a philosophy that, okay, PMs are supposed to understand the business and the customer, and they end up working with engineering managers and really figure out the problem together. So naturally, I found that Amazon was the right fit for me, both because they would interview me based on like my non-technical background, and B, I would be in a company and in a cohort of PMs who are similar to my where I am, who are curious to get into tech, who want to get into product, but don't really have product experience from their past life. Um, so I kind of find the right fit at Amazon, and really that's also reflected in their interview process as well. Um, the Amazon interviews are, they're extremely rigorous, but they kind of focus on, your core problem solving skills, your ability to get things done. Do you have a product sense? Um, which is like saying, hey, like if you are given an ambiguous problem, can you think of a creative solution to solve that problem? And I mean, all of this, the requirements of, although it's very rigorous and you really need to, you should be able to explain every single detail of your story. But there's not much of an emphasis on having worked in a very specific technology to get into Amazon. So I was able to kind of break into PM through Amazon, because I think they kind of were valuing the set of skill sets that I had and I could bring to the table. But there's like obviously this contract that you go in and you kind of build your technical expertise over a period of time. And the way they do that is, typically some of these interviews at Amazon, there's also a interview with an engineering manager, and they're not testing whether you can write code in these interviews, but they're testing your ability to think like an engineer. So brushing up on that is important. Like, you need to understand what are the different things that kind of go into building something like a Google search, right? You don't have to know exactly the components, but at a high level, at an abstract level, what are the components, right? You get a query, you do something with that query, um, uh, just like individual components like that, and like what would make it more efficient. So just having some intuition about that is important to crack these interviews. And it's slightly easier at companies like Amazon if you're a non-technical person versus like a company like Google, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's broadly just about being technically curious of, like how do things actually work under the hood. You don't have to be able to build them yourself, but if you have to, dig into things and explain it to a friend, would you be able to do that or not? Um, what
Yeah,
what
that's exactly right.
what was the product that you worked on at Amazon?
So I worked on a couple of different products during my time at Amazon. So one of the products I worked on was the checkout page on Amazon.com. So essentially, and this is a joke, right? Like, I mean, if you're working for some of these large tech companies, you have sometimes you'll have PMs who work on a very very small component of, like, someone will be focusing on, hey, how do I make the compose button in Gmail better? So uh, I mean, I was kind of in a role where I was working on just one aspect of the checkout page, which is like the promise that you see when you're checking out. So it's essentially, it says you will get your product by April 24th, right? Um, and kind of, I was surprised that this seems like a very small scope for a PM, but I mean, there's really a lot of science and algorithms that go behind spitting out that one number. So I spent almost a year and a half trying to improve the accuracy of the number that's shown on that screen. So that's how I would describe the first role that I did, and it was
It
it
seems
was
like
extremely interesting.
such a simple thing. What were some of the factors that, like, why was it such a complex problem to solve?
Amazon is a very complex network of physical locations that store your product, and you're really getting orders, online orders from across the length and breadth of essentially the world, right? Like not just US, but I was focusing a lot on the US market. And there are various factors like everything from weather to how stressed our networks are. If the warehouses that are churning out these packages are operating at 95% capacity, the chance of error kind of goes up. But you kind of have to determine how much does that error go up by, because if you overcorrect, then you are giving, you're probably deterring a lot of customers from buying the product by showing them a long delivery period, whereas you could be getting the product to them sooner. So, everything from like weather to how stressed the network is, what is the distance between where the product is located and where the customer is, who is actually carrying the package. So like whether it's a courier company one versus courier company two, how has their historical performance been? All of this kind of plays into giving that promise. And then you have to also factor in things like, when does the uh, when does the truck actually arrive at the warehouse, right? Like, will you be able to make it in time? Will the package be able to make in time before the truck leaves? So things like that. I mean, it's very similar to a airline reservation problem, where you have a bunch of people that want to go from point A to point B. You have to figure out, okay, can they, what's the best flight you can put them on, in order to get them in the cheapest and fastest way possible. Um, so, so yeah, I was, and I mean, you can imagine that this is already a pretty sophisticated system, and for the most time, it would work at like 97+% accuracy. So, in that role, I was really trying to figure out, hey, how do I juice out another 10 basis points and 20 basis points improvements, and make it like slightly more accurate than it already is? And, we ended up using a lot of like ML to figure out some of these risk parameters and adjusting the promise uh, based on these risks.
Yeah, and 10, 20 basis points might sound so small, but ends up impacting, billions of dollars of revenue and conversion and, throughput. So, yeah, like that I think that's the trade-off where when you're at a big company, you might be working on a very small part of the product, but multiply that by, billions of users and your impact is huge.
That's right. I mean, we had a study, like an economic study done, where we actually calculated the value of 1 basis point. So, and 1 basis point is like 1/100th of a percentage. So, and it was like to the tune of $5 to $6 million a month. So that's how
Uh,
impactful just moving that number by 1 basis point was, because it affects at a psychological level. When you see something arriving a day after you expect it to, you might just end up getting it from a local store. So there's a lot of things that play into it. You might be at home tomorrow, but you might not be home day after, and you want it tomorrow itself. So there's a lot of real dollar value associated with just improving that number by like half a percentage point. So
so yeah, that sounds like a very kind of hairy problem to take on. Then, that's like a multinodal network, and you have to figure out things with third-party vendors and partners and ecosystem and weather and all of these things. And this was your first, like, PM role. What were you kind of learning on the PM role side of things? Maybe like, were there any learnings or mistakes that you made early on that you learned from?
for me, one of the things that I learned, in fact, I mean, when I transitioned into I felt, just given my kind of background, I'm generally a very analytical person, and like I was kind of that kind of got reinforced because of the kind of work that I was doing at ITC and consulting and stuff like that. So I actually loved this space, and I really loved working on this problem and digging really deep into some of these like root causes and understanding things with engineers. Um, I I learned a lot about engineering, like how engineering systems are architected, like to get to this like final number, like what needs to happen in the back end, like how things like latency is important. How do you architect a system, in a way that can spit out this promise in a fraction of a second, right? How do you make smart guesses, right? Like a lot of times you cannot arrive at a deterministic solution. So I understood a lot about some of the system design related problems and issues. Um, I would say, like, the second role that I did at Amazon was completely opposite. It was like a 0 to 1 problem. You're not trying to improve things by a basis point. You're trying to launch a product in the market, essentially. Uh, and the the biggest mistake I think I did when I entered the second role, and I can talk about it a little bit later on, was I brought that kind of super analytical mentality to a role where I needed to kind of ship a product that meets an MVP threshold, and really gets us some traction. Um, so I would say, like, one of my biggest learnings as a PM didn't come in my first role, but rather when I moved to the second role, which is a little bit more common in the type of roles that PMs end up doing, which is, you're given a problem statement, you're given a cohort of customers that you're trying to solve that problem for, and you are supposed to come up with a set of features that will address their needs. And yeah, I was kind of wearing that same analytical hat and trying to figure out every possible solution and every possible scenario that the customers will run into. And in a way, I kind of over engineered the product, and uh, you know uh, so that was my biggest learning, and my real, like, first real um, uh, kind of aha moment in product, where that's when I realized, as a product manager, you really need to be the person that says no most of the times, and yes, very few occasions.
That's a uh, very hard balance to strike. Where we talked about, on one hand, Amazon is very experimental based culture where they want to constantly be trying new things and see what sticks. But at the same time, the bar is very high for each of those experiments. How do they kind of balance this from a culture perspective of, like, sometimes something is experimental and you don't know if it's going to work or not, but you also want to keep a high bar and just not be wasting resources building anything. How do they balance that?
Yeah, I think the culture of experimentation at Amazon, doesn't come at the cost of lack of rigor. So that's the that's the fine balance here. So it's okay to have extremely strong conviction, and which gets built by this process of iteration, and really, like, making sure you're creating this, like, nice, like, 6-pager doc that really outlines your vision. So you need, like, that's a prerequisite, even if you want to, you want to come up with, like, a personal assistant that can be like a friend, and, like, talk to you. I mean, it seems moonshot, but I mean, someone wrote a really compelling vision doc uh, of why they believe that something like this would work, and how they imagine this to become a part of the customers' lives. Like, what are the needs that they're trying to solve for? Um, the culture of experimentation comes where you're not, once you build this conviction uh, and get funded to build it. Let's say you build it and it doesn't really take off, right? The culture of experimentation at Amazon doesn't penalize you for having dreamt up that idea that eventually did not work out. So it lets you, there's an expectation that once you start building it out, you experiment it thoughtfully, and again, like, if you are able to prove that uh, there is an upside, you keep investing in it. But if there isn't an upside, you can raise your hand and say, I was wrong about my conviction, and these are the 5 reasons that I was wrong, and this I did not consider in my initial PR FAQ, and hence, it does not make sense to keep investing in this product. So that culture of experimentation, somewhere still requires a level of rigor, so that you are making sure that you are learning and taking the right uh, lessons to your next project, and not wasting resources on half-baked ideas, essentially. So that's the way Amazon ends up balancing this, and I think it does it really well.
Yeah, that reminds me of this book, Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, where she talks about this concept of resulting in poker, where regardless of what the end outcome is, as long as when the decision was made, it was a sound decision, that's what matters. So if you went all in and you were ahead and you had the better hand, it doesn't matter if the other person ended up winning because they got lucky. What matters is you made the right decision in the moment, and if you do that often enough, the odds are going to be in your favor, where you're going to uh, statistically just come out ahead in the long term. So that's kind of
Got
what
it.
this
Yeah,
sounds
that
like. Yeah.
definitely resonates. Yep.
Uh, awesome. And so after Amazon, you moved to Uber. What was that transition like? Going from logistics, e-commerce to a very transportation heavy company.
In my kind of career, I've been trying to, one of the goals that I took on was, I wanted to get into the more kind of, uh, the engine room of the ship, so to say, right? Like I wanted to get into more technical product management roles. And the reason for that was, I was kind of really excited about um, building cool like products for the end customers and things like that. But I felt like, just from a career point of view, there are I'm excited about uh, very very hardcore kind of technologies that power some of these larger platforms. I mean, I get excited when I really peel back the onion and see how one tech stack is giving you a slightly better edge in terms of your user experience, and things just feel a little bit better when you are ordering a cab from Uber, like versus a competing app, right? So, and a lot of that is all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So I, as a personal kind of curiosity and a personal goal, I've kind of been moving more and more towards these foundational pieces of technology. And like the MBA in me, the way I see it is, you know, there are far fewer product managers on some of these more foundational technologies who can bring the perspective about technology and also the business together to become effective product managers. So I've been trying to move into more and more technical roles, technical PM roles as part of my career, and that's how the switch to Uber kind of appealed to me, because it was a role where I could, Uber is known for its engineering culture, where there is a lot of kind of emphasis on building for scale. Uber came up with a lot of technologies that are out in the open source right now that they had to invent, because the kind of problem that Uber was trying to solve, which is like the real time matching, was uh, there weren't technologies that were solving those kind of problems. They had to come up with like a time series database that did not exist before their time, and things like that. So I had heard a lot of good things from my peers about Uber, and how it's a very engineering driven culture, and you get to see a lot of the tech, and you get to participate in a lot of these discussions around how something is actually built. How it would look if it was built in this way versus that way. and that kind of sounded interesting to me in my law, like the arc of like where I wanted to get career wise. So that was what kind of prompted me to opportunistically make a move. I wasn't looking for a move or anything, but I kind of got reached out by a team, and they were working on some really interesting problems. The problem that specifically that team was trying to solve for is, Uber was trying to evolve from being a rideshare application to becoming a super app, right? And everyone is trying to do that. So, um, and the team that I was part of was a core foundational team that was trying to build the all of the backend technologies that would unify uh, your activities from different businesses and show them together in the Uber application. So there was a lot of like, I found this role really exciting because I was like, hey, I'm getting an opportunity to look under the hood of how all of these different applications are architected in the backend and really piece all of them together in this like unified service and a unified view. And there's a real customer impact where I definitely feel frustrated when I order something on Uber Eats or on Corner Shop or Drizzly, but then those orders don't show up on the Uber app. I have to click through a few different screens to get to my Uber Eats order in the Uber app. So it's a very confusing experience. So I had seen that pain point firsthand. Um, so I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity for learning the tech and also solving an impactful customer problem. So that's how I kind of ended up moving to Uber.
Got it. And can you talk a bit more about what was the product that you were working on?
Yeah, so I started talking about it a little bit,
Yeah.
but I worked on something called as a activity hub within. That's like the front end that the user experiences. Essentially, a year or a year and a half back, if you fired up your Uber app and you went to your trip history, that's what the surface was called. You could only see your Uber rides, and I mean there was limited ability to interact on that page. It was like a laundry list of all the trips that you took. So the task that the team was trying to solve for was how do we evolve the surface in a context where Uber is not just a ride sharing business. Like it can get you your food, it can get you groceries, it can get you alcohol. It can in some cases book a rental car for you. Now the landscape of the business has evolved, um, and Uber application, like Uber has a couple of mobile apps. There's a Uber app, there's an Uber Eats app, there's a separate app for Drizzly and Corner Shop as well. But Uber app by far has the highest number of eyeballs. So how do you evolve this trip history page, which is like the sleepy page where you was kind of came as an afterthought. It was not really a feature in the app. It was where you went to just look at your receipts and stuff. Like, how do you take that and monetize that page? How do you make that a page where you can see all of your activity, right? Can you introduce a reorder button there or a rebook button there, right? Like, can you nudge people to make repeat purchases um, based on their past history? Can you give things like uh, is it like visually can you make it a little bit better, right? Like if you remember in the olden days, all of the Uber trips would show like a small thumbnail with the map in it. Like, is that really needed? You might want to see the map for your most recent trip, sure, but do you need to see the map for your, third most recent trip? Probably not. So we took the opportunity to really re-architect that page. It was kind of hidden in the application behind a couple of clicks, and now it's front and center. It's one of the four things that you see on the bottom bar. So that was really the product that I worked on. And there were of course like two parts to it. Like one was how do you surface all of this information in a neat and coherent way, And a much more interesting kind of problem was on the back end, where, how do you really bring all of this information from various siloed engineering systems, multiplex it together in a way that, that is paginated by date and time when those activities happened. So it was like a two-part problem with like a bunch of front end work and a bunch of back end work. And yeah, I kind of worked on it for um, almost uh, uh, almost like 8 to 9 months, and we started shipping it out, and now it's we were kind of experimenting with that page a little bit, but now it's kind of fully rolled out in the US market, at least like from what I know. But there are plans to kind of expand that surface and make it even better. But I transitioned to a different team after that. But that was one of the main projects that I worked on at Uber.
Nice. So if I if I were to do like a Amazon style PR FAQ for that, it would be Uber's launched this feature in their app which lets you track your history and your transactions basically across all of Uber's businesses. So Uber Eats, Uber ride sharing, the car rentals, the alcohol deliveries, the groceries, all of that. So becomes like a one-stop shop for consumers where you can almost do everything that you want on a daily basis through this one app.
Yeah, that's absolutely the
Mm.
value proposal there, value proposition. And also, like, I think one problem we were trying to solve for was, hey, like, can we nudge you to reorder that salad that you really liked and you
Mm.
ordered last week, but you kind of forgot about it. So, like, can I give you like a way to just like click reorder and the whole thing just repeats itself? And those workflows already existed in Uber, but we were trying to make it very, very like front and center and very user friendly to easily do that and drive more revenue for the business as well.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of the Amazon dash buttons that they used to sell, where you could have like a dash
Yeah,
button above your washing machine when you hit it and it reorders detergent or dryer sheets or whatever for you. So it's like a software
yeah,
equivalent of that.
that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice. So yeah, and so I guess that was the kind of business impact, and that was the reason why Uber as a business was investing in this. So the proposition to users wasn't, "Hey, we'll let you buy more stuff." The value proposition to users was it becomes a more easy, consolidated workflow for you as a user. But for the business, it's helpful because as you make that easier for the user, it means there's more conversion, there's more repeat usage, there's more retention of the users, things like that. Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah, I think there was a conviction that we brought together a lot of these like adjacent businesses within Uber, and the strategy was called go and get. So you can go anywhere you want
Mm.
using like a ride share or like a Lime cycle, or and you can get anything you want. So like hyper local deliveries, you can order Apple iPhones using Uber app now, and they've been investing in a lot of these things, so that it becomes your hyper like an app that can get you anything in the hyper local environment. Um, and yeah, I mean, this was an attempt to really elevate that and like give a single pane of glass view for the users to discover some of these services and like really extract the full value from their Uber, you know, yeah, like their Uber membership, or not
Yeah.
membership in like a membership sense, but like you're using this kind of service in, hey, like we can do like these 10 other things for you as well.
Yeah. Are you able to share kind of what was the end impact, at least on a macro level? Like, how did this actually help the business, and how much is Uber continuing to invest in this?
Yeah, I mean, without kind of getting into the specific, numbers and stuff, one of the indicators that that you can see in kind of public filings and stuff as well is Uber very successfully, at least in the US, pivoted into this ride sharing plus get everything type of business at the right time. So a lot of these ride sharing companies started losing revenues during the pandemic, and some of them have been kind of haven't been able to recover from that slump in demand and revenue. But Uber, because of its positioning and because it kind of invested in these various aspects, they were almost able to cancel out the drop in ride sharing, which I mean almost went down to zero during like the peak pandemic days, by the revenues that they could get from the delivery businesses in the US. So Uber was able to kind of operate at a lot more flatter revenues as compared to a lot of other companies that were just focused on rideshare or just focused on like individual pieces of these businesses, like the cycle sharing and things like that. So by creating this portfolio strategy and making it easy for customers to discover things, there's definitely signals that this is creating sort of a flywheel that companies like Amazon have been successfully able to build. And in fact, like one of the things that we were able to use this surface for was to sell the Uber One membership. So Uber One is similar to Amazon Prime. So if you find yourself like using Uber products all the time, it's at some point it becomes beneficial to just buy the Uber One membership, which takes away all your delivery costs and things like that. So this was also the right surface to upsell people into that Uber One membership. So we definitely saw a lot of engagement on membership acquisitions through the Activity Hub page. We definitely saw a lot of first-time reservations, right? So one of the things that we could promote on this page was, hey, this is an activity of all the stuff that you do on Uber. But did you know you could also reserve a ride for your upcoming, trip to the airport or things like that? So that surface also became an entry point into the reservations product, and we saw a lot of engagement on that front as well. We were tracking other metrics like how many times are people reordering their meals, how many times are they rebooking a trip that they already took, and a lot of those signals were showing very, very positive results.
Cool. I want to get to Block now. So last year you moved to a product role at Block. First of all, yeah, what is Block? If you can give a quick overview.
Yeah, so Block is it was previously called Square, and now it's kind of rebranded as Block, as a play on Square is like a two-dimensional figure, and Block is a three-dimensional kind of figure. There's probably some implications around investing in blockchain technologies as well, but no one's kind of clear on that. But Block is a company that's run by Jack Dorsey. He's the CEO of the company. Jack Dorsey was also the founder of Twitter, and essentially he started this other company right around the same time when he started Twitter. The core product that Block launched was a point of sale device that could plug into your iPhone, and that would let you take a payment from a credit card without actually investing in cash registers or expensive point of sale machines. So that was really their claim to fame, and like that was like the first great product that the company launched under the Square brand name. But since then, Block as a company has diversified into multiple fintech categories. So Block, yeah, I mean, it's a fintech company essentially. The main line of business is, of course, Square, point of sale systems. So now they come in all kind of sizes and shapes. Whenever you go to like a fancy coffee shop that charges you like $7 for a coffee, and you see like a very fancy point of sale system, the sleek, modern looking point of sale systems, that those are the kind of devices that Square manufactures. They were able to kind of, once they had this system installed in these small businesses, they kind of smartly moved in categories like workforce management and taxation and inventory management, appointment booking. So now it's not just the hardware that is the business, but there's a bunch of SaaS products that have been built on top of this hardware. And essentially it has kind of become an operating system for small businesses, where they can do multiple things relevant to their business through that one device. And Block has other businesses as well. There's a business called Cash App, which is a competitor to Venmo and Zelle and Paytm in India, for example. So it does peer-to-peer payments, and they've been doing a lot of innovation in that product as well. So things like, can you if you link your employer, if you link your paycheck to the cash account, can you give instant deposits? Kind of a soft kind of credit to the end customer essentially. Can you let people buy Bitcoin? Can you let people buy stocks through that single app? So that's another like big business that Block has. And lastly, they recently acquired a company called Afterpay, which is a buy now, pay later company that was based in Australia. So as a way to connect the seller ecosystem that they've built through Square and the buyer ecosystem that they've built through Cash App. So the acquisition of Afterpay was a mechanism to connect that buyer ecosystem with the seller ecosystem. So it's a bunch of these like fintech type products that Block runs. I mean, it's a company that's kind of $40 billion in valuation. So it's like a medium to large size tech company. So, and my role at Block is I'm the PM for the machine learning and AI platform at Block. So again, it kind of made sense for me to, I wanted to get into the engine room of how things are actually being made at some of these tech companies. So this was very much like that kind of a move for me, where I'm kind of working on platformizing the technologies that are needed for running ML workloads, AI related features at scale across the company.
So, what's the use case for AI and machine learning at Block?
Yeah, so I mean, there are several, and like the biggest one is, of course, risk management, right? Like a fintech company. The promise of Square was to, the process of getting a point of sale system for a small business was very, very cumbersome before, all of these like new age point of sale systems came along, right? So you had to go to an actual bank, you had to get, you had to prove that you are like a credit worthy person to actually start accepting credit card payments, right? And this process could take like 15-20 days from start to end, which is kind of a lot of friction for someone who is kind of trying to start a business. The promise of Square is you go to their website, you fill out a few forms, and you're instantly approved for a point of sale system. Now, to power a experience like that, you need to rely on ML. So the onboarding ML models is like one example of a model where you might be looking at signals like where, like, what's the IP address this is coming from? Like, have we seen any fraudulent traffic from this IP address before? And like using all of those features to make a snap judgment whether this is a legitimate seller, or is this someone trying to defraud the system, right? And then, once the point of sale system is issued, you need, again, risk models to verify whether a credit card transaction is a valid transaction or a fraudulent transaction. If your platform allows for scammers to, use their credit cards in a fraudulent way, that's a real cost that can pile up for businesses. And it can come to the fintech company as well as a liability if they get a lot of bad loans, like sellers kind of default on on their payments and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like ML models that are built into the product that work behind the scenes to make sure that the platform runs smoothly. It keeps out the bad transactions and lets the good transactions come in. One other really interesting product that Square launched was Square Loans. So it was like first of its type loans product given to small merchants, which works on actually setting aside they the Square POS system sees the revenue streams coming from your shop, essentially, right? So you can divert 15% of every payment into a loan account, and that acts as like a repayment mechanism. So it was one of those products that did not require a lot of credit history checking and things like that, because you had access to the revenue stream of the sellers themselves, and you could kind of park their money into like an account that repays your loan. So it's one of the most, like, again, successful products, and it uses a lot of ML behind the scenes to make that happen. So
Got
yeah,
it.
these are just some examples. But I mean, our team supports more than 70 different teams within Block. So it's within Square, Cash, Afterpay. Wherever there's an ML model being deployed, our team kind of provides the infrastructure and the backbone to run those ML and AI workloads.
Got it. Very cool. Yeah, look forward to seeing what comes out there and how how companies use AI and ML in a lot of these infrastructure products. To determine risk, to determine identity, fraud, things like this. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be use cases like this across the entire ecosystem. So look forward to seeing what comes out there. Okay, I want to go through a rapid fire, round. So like very quick questions. Like whatever comes to mind. So looking back, what are two of the most interesting books that you've read recently?
The power law, and um, oh, I'm blanking out on the other one, which is the type one, the system one, system two, the slow and fast thinking by Daniel
Thinking
Kahneman.
fast
So
and
those are
slow.
the two ones I love.
Yeah,
Thinking
yeah.
fast and slow. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Makes sense for someone you said who's very analytical.
Yeah, I mean, it was for me to kind of break that. I'm a little
Okay.
bit more on the system two thinker type of a person.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are the advantages of like both the systems? It's a pretty cool book, and it's slightly academic type of a read.
Mm.
But if you kind of really power through the book and like make sure you get to the end, I think it kind of gives you some good life lessons. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. I read it a few years ago. It's a tough read. It's a tough one to
Yeah.
get through. What's your go-to source for learning about new trends in product management, and generally in the industries that you work in?
Yeah, so I subscribe to a lot of newsletters. So TLDR is one, the Pragmatic Engineer is another one. There's this another one called Day One, which was started by an ex-Amazon employee. So those are a few newsletters, and that has become one of my ways to keep up with the industry trends these days. Yeah.
Got it. Do you have a favorite podcast that you listen to?
Yes. So I really like the All In podcast,
Yeah,
which is essentially, four people in VC, and all of them have kind of achieved a lot in their own fields, and they come together and talk about recent business, tech, and political trends. So that is like my go-to. I kind of look forward to the new episode coming out on Fridays. And then there's another one called This Week in there's a lot of like This Week in Dash type podcasts,
yeah.
and I listen to a few of them. So like This Week in Startups is really cool. This Week in Machine Learning is something that I've recently started following because of my switch to MLAI. So I would say, yeah, those are the four sort of podcasts that I listen to.
Are you a morning person or a night person? Like, where do you like, or what time of the
Uh,
day do you like working?
I was very much a night person. I would like, love to be in like silent this thing till 2 a.m. in the night and crank things out. But increasingly, I've become a morning person to my own surprise, actually. So, I'm now very much a morning person. So I always thought that, this is like, you're either a morning person or a night person, but I've seen this drastic shift in me that now I'm a morning person, and I cannot stay up after like 12:30 or 11:30 or 12 in the night. Like that's completely. I think it's a function of adulting, I guess, that I've evolved from being a night person to a morning person now.
I still find it very difficult to wake up in the morning, so maybe as the years go on, yeah. What's a new skill that you've learned in the past 12 months?
I guess. A new skill. I know this is a rapid fire. So, um, yeah, I've been like, trying to get my hands dirty on actually writing, Python code. So I've been kind of playing around with our, we use like Databricks under the hood. So, like, I've been playing with Databricks and running like small models and stuff. Generative AI has been like one of the things that I've been dabbling into a lot these days. Again, for partially for work reason and also for just generally picking up as a skill. So just trying to build more empathy for developers because that's the main audience that I'm kind of building products for in my current role. So yeah, I've gotten a little bit. I mean, nothing serious, but like just some simple, taking some sample data, running a few models, and like seeing the magic happen in front of my eyes. Like it's actually pretty exciting. I feel like.
Cool. What's a skill that you want to pick up over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think uh, if I would point out at one thing, I want to get like more disciplined at like uh, carving out time for learning and self development and like reading in general. I tend to be, not that great about protecting my time to do that. And I'm sure like a lot of us are in that same boat, where, there are some weeks where things are crazy and, we just don't, invest the same level of time and energy in our self development. Um, so I want to be a little bit more methodical and deliberate about self development and reading books and keeping myself updated.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I I used to read a lot of books until a couple of years ago, and then last 1 year, I feel like I've not been able to get through as many as I'd want to. It's tough to find that balance. As we close this out, what's some advice that you would give to early product managers as they're going through planning their career, going through thinking about what project they should take on, what companies they should work at? Any advice you'd give them?
Yeah, I think, the one advice that, someone gave to me actually, and, I would like to give to folks trying to get into product management or just like accelerate their career in product management is, play the long game. It's a short way of saying that I think there's a little bit of this mentality, especially in the tech ecosystem, that you need to succeed very quickly. You need to kind of you know build your unicorn, or really get to leading a big product team. And there are examples of people who were able to do that within like a few years after their college and things like that. And that's great. That oftentimes it happens and things kind of fall into place. But if you feel that you need more time to explore, and if you need more time to really build skill set, someone kind of told me this, that it's okay to invest time in that, and be kind of it's okay to kind of take a step back sometimes to get into the field that you want to get into. It's okay to really spend time learning a skill set, taking breaks from careers and things like that, because I think we tend to kind of over index on the short term success a lot. But if you think about it, right, like a lot of people will make most of their kind of wealth slightly later in their careers, right? Like, people in their 40s, 50s, that's when you get to become the CEO of a large company and things like that. So if you kind of rush into it a little bit, right, like you might miss on critical pivots that could have steered your career in a direction where you wanted to go. And you might commit too soon to industry just because you were getting that promotion, just you're getting that additional scope. But if your heart is not there, right, like careers are pretty long, and so play the long game, like be very hungry for learning new things, and don't be afraid to take a step back. And when it's the right moment, things tend to happen pretty quickly. um, so wait for that moment. Don't kind of rush into it. That would be my advice.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. Enjoy the journey, and don't kind of, uh, you know, don't try to take shortcuts or accelerate through it, because yeah, that can help end up hurting you in the long run, because you haven't spent the time, you haven't
Yeah.
gone through the journey itself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I some people kind of figure this out very early, and they feel like this is it, this is the right thing. I want to double down on this. I want to give my 120% to this one project, and that's great. I mean, but if you're not quite there, you shouldn't force yourself uh, to to try to do something that is not the right fit for you. So, it's okay to be confused, to explore a bit, and hopefully, you land up in a spot that you feel really good about, and that's when you take a leap of faith and really commit yourself to a career. So
Great. Thanks, Mitesh. This has been such an interesting conversation. I mean, we like blew past the time mark here, but I think there's so much to dig into for, in each of your experiences, and study how all of that came together. So very interesting conversation. I'm sure a lot of insights for anyone watching this.
yeah, no, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much for starting this podcast series. I think a lot of people I know want this kind of information, which is just yeah, very very first hand experience of people who they can relate to, and how they are kind of facing some of the problems, or they're kind of dealing with them. So This is definitely something I look forward to watching. So I'm really glad that I got to be on this show with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mitesh. Take care.
Yeah, thank you, Akash. Bye.